What's going on, guys? Otaku back with another tier list. Y'all really seem to like the last tier list about what decks are most likely to win Worlds. So let's talk about the tier list that basically every other Yugi tuber is doing right now, and that is what's the new format looking like now that Duelist Nexus has been out for about a week and a half, 2 weeks when this video is probably going up, and a lot of decks were affected by Dune, some of which are getting a pretty good bit of support, and others got minor support that just keeps them afloat, to say the least. So some decks, like, we're mainly just looking at decks that we see consistently in the format, not just decks that were affected by Duelist Nexus. There are decks on here that are only on here because they were affected by Duelist Nexus, but you know, stuff like Exo Sisters. There were no Exo Sister support in Duelist Nexus, but we still consistently see them in the format. We're going to start off with Altergeist. Altergeist has actually got really good support. Altergeist was primarily like a control deck, and for the longest time, they kind of fell out of the meta. However, Duelist Nexus brought out some amazing support, so it is not only a control deck, but it is a combo deck now. It's actually kind of crazy, the support that it got. That being said, I would go as far to say that it's still not like tier 1. Tier 1, of course, we're talking about the best decks in the format. This isn't like, you know, your tier 1, tier 2 situation that like most tier lists abide by. This is more of like tier 1 is the decks I think are going to be the best decks in the format. You're going to see all the damn time. Tier 2 are decks that are still incredibly strong, but tier 1 decks kind of shadow them out most of the time. And then Rogue is stuff that it's a Rogue deck. You know, you're going to bring it in and you're going to catch someone off guard and it's going to perform well. But yeah, the Altergeist still very, very incredibly strong deck. Honestly, I'd say this is borderline tier 1. I think we're going to see a lot of Altergeist now, because the fact that it was already a control and now it's got like more of combo plays to go with it is incredibly insane. Branded did, like, it didn't get direct support, but the new illusion archetype does play very well with branded. You run a branded engine in the illusion, not the other way around. That being said, I personally don't think it's all that great of a deck. I know it can set up like 3 negates and end with like Mirror Jade and shit on board. I know it sets up some strong boards. The issue is that it dies to the same interruptions that normal branded dies to, which is Ash Blossom and a handful of other things. And because of that, like, the branded hasn't gotten any better as a deck from any new cards that came out in Dune. As much as I love branded, I think branded is honestly, it's not one of the best decks anymore. It's just a bunch of other decks are overshadowing it. It's still a very, very strong deck, and you know, you can still top it at your locals. You could still probably top it at regionals, etc., etc. But I just think that a lot of the better decks in the format right now just they bully branded. So again, this is my main deck and one of my favorite decks, but I just think branded has gotten to the point where it's incredibly underwhelming. Which, to be fair, we've been playing branded for 2+ years now. So time to make room for some newer decks for sure. Dark World, or Danger Dark World, however you want to play Dark World. Dark World got arguably some of the best support it could have gotten with Dark Corridor. Yes, it is not a searchable Dark World card, but Dark World draws so much as it is, you're going to run into it. It's a 2 of in the deck. Dark Corridor is definitely a 2 of. I would not recommend running 3 of it. Just being able to search a Dark World card off of it, and then you can just discard the one you just added if you're just in a bad spot with your hand. Just incredibly strong card. Dark World, honestly, the issue with Dark World being anywhere in the format right now is Dark World, like many other decks, some also on this list, they die to 2 specific cards. Dimensional Shifter, which, you know, our good friends Kashtira players play, and Kashtira Riseheart. If your stuff that needs to go to the grave is getting banished instead, your deck just doesn't play. Which unfortunately means I love Danger Dark World. I've recently picked this deck up. I think it's incredibly fun to play. But unfortunately, with Kashtira still being very prevalent in the format, and even though Rise Heart is only at 1, he still exists. And Kashtira runs Dimensional Shifter at 3, I'm pretty sure, because they can get away with it. And so just the moment even if you decide to go first to try and hand loop your opponent just goes Chain D Shifter, you just don't play the game, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I can't put Dark World any higher than a Rogue deck. This is a deck that you can take to your locals, catch some people off guard, perform very well. But the moment you try and get into a highly competitive format like a regional, unfortunately you're going to get put in your place. As much as that, I hate to say that. Dinosaurs is getting a lot of love lately. We had love from Wild Survivors with Ground Xeno and just a couple of other dinosaur support. We got love in Dune with the Evolzors support, but also the new, I think it's Lars, Evolzar Lars, the new rank 6 is very strong. Just being able to basically target negate effects, and then also it does come at a hefty toll, but of detaching 2 materials. However, if you have a dinosaur or reptile as materials, you only have to detach the 1. And I don't recall, I have to reread the card, but I'm pretty sure it's not a once per turn. So just incredibly strong card. I'd have to go as far to say like Dinosaurs is tier 1, but bottom of tier 1. Just the support it's been getting from Wild Survivors plus the support it got from Dune has made the deck very strong. I haven't personally had to face the new versions of Dinosaur. The only dinosaurs I've been playing against is Dinomorphia, but even so, the new rank 6 also helps Dinomorphia, because I'm pretty sure they can make it. Just an incredibly strong archetype in general. But so I'd say bottom of tier 1. I would not say this is tier 2. This is definitely one of the better decks, and I think it's very competitively viable moving forward into the format. But I wouldn't put it any higher. Like, no matter what other deck we put in tier 1, I'm pretty sure Dinosaur will still get overshadowed by it. We got Sky Strikers. Unfortunately, again, Sky Strikers is in the same scenario as Dark World. You want all your stuff going to the grave, so if your opponent just turn 1 shifters, the Sky Striker doesn't play a whole lot. Because you want to put your stuff in the graveyard, because if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you're getting those bonus effects. Unfortunately, Sky Striker again it's not going very far. Even though Engage is at 2, multi-roll is at 3. It got the new support in Battles of Legend. Unfortunately, it's just not doing much, which is unfortunate because it's a very fun archetype. But again, as long as Shifter specifically is in the format, decks like Dark World and Sky Striker just don't play very well. You can play around Rise Heart. Like if you're playing Dark World and you're going against the Cash matchup, that is unfortunate for you, especially if they go turn 1 summon a Rise Heart. But that's a lot more manageable than any other deck that can play Shifter. Just go and turn 1 activate Shifter. That's just, unfortunately, Shifter single-handedly will win games against these 2 decks. Exo Sisters, tier 2. Exo Sisters is a very strong deck. Its performance, it's been winning a lot. It's been topping a lot of events. It topped, I believe, a Nationals recently, or WCQ. I don't remember what it topped. But it's a very strong deck. With Sakitama having come out back in Cyberstorm Access, the deck has just constantly been improving and doing better. Again, another deck that can run Dimension Shifter without really giving a shit. And the ability to just be able to... It's one of those decks that just banishes. It prioritizes banishing over popping. And just overall a really strong deck. The issue is that it loses to stuff like Branded, where Branded can just use your light monsters to make their own stuff with either, Super Poly or Albaz himself. And it also loses to it loses to removal, unfortunately, because the trap cards heavily rely on you controlling a Sky Striker card. So if you get Kaiju'd or your opponent just activates Raigeki or Dark Hole, unfortunately you just lose the game. But overall, just a very, very strong deck, and but I wouldn't put it in tier 1 by any means. Heroes. I love Heroes. I've never played Heroes. I don't care to play Heroes. It's an expensive deck for sure. The support it got in Battles of Legend with the new Flame Wingman, being able to search favorite contact, which can then open the door for many, many other plays, is just astronomically insane. I mentioned this in the Worlds tier list, that Heroes at Worlds probably won't perform as well as it will in the current format, and that's simply because the Flame Wingman is banished. Or not banished, is banned. I think Heroes is easily top tier 2. It's one of those decks that you'll just be able to bring to your locals, possibly even regionals, catch some people off guard, just overall just stomp them out of the game. Because like I said, that Flame Wingman does a lot more. Does so much for the deck. It's absolutely incredible. But it does stomp out a lot of these other decks because of just the amount of plays and the crazy boards it can set up. The only thing that is holding Heroes back is it still, to this day, doesn't have a negate. It just has popping and interruptions. So that's the main thing Heroes are lacking for sure. Kashtira, unfortunately, Kashtira is still the best deck. The reason this deck will not really perform at Worlds is because Fenrir is banned, Unicorn, Theosis, and the field spell are limited. Diablosis is banned. So many cards that are played in Kashtira are hit at Worlds, but unfortunately in the TCG, with the current format, Kashtira is still incredibly powerful. Fenrir at 3, Unicorn only at 2, Diablosis banned. That is it. That's the only slap on the wrist it has gotten. So Kashtira is still 100% the best deck in the format. Very few decks can compete with it, and that's just simply because Arise Heart, even though it's only at 1, is such a force to be reckoned with. The ability to be a walking macrocosmos is just incredibly powerful. And like I said, it kills decks like Dark World and Sky Striker so they can't compete. And, you know, it even hurts stuff like Branded. Heroes like their stuff going to the grave for sure. But it's just unfortunate that Kashtira is still standing strong. Simply because their boss monster makes the game really difficult to play. Labyrinth, it's close second. I think Labyrinth is going to take Worlds, as I said in the tier list video for Worlds. And unfortunately, Labyrinth didn't get any support in Dune, but it's getting support in Age of Overlord in like November-ish, which is going to be insane. But being able to search out stuff like Eradicator Virus and, even Skill Drain, shit like that, is just insane. The deck has so much gas, and honestly, the only reason it's not number 1 is because if Arise Heart is activating, if Arise Heart's on board, your Big Welcome is getting banished, which means you don't get that bonus effect from Big Welcome. That being said, Labyrinth does have ways to play around Cash easily. It's a very, I would say it's a very back and forth matchup for sure. But yeah, Labyrinth is my all-time least favorite deck, and I wish this thing could be brought down to pegs sooner rather than later. Manadium. This deck got some really good support. I know that a lot of people are saying this deck is now insane. I have not seen it. I have personally not read it, but based off of just what I've heard and what I know that the Manadium stuff before Dune was already pretty strong. And a lot of people are saying that this is pretty insane. Simply because I haven't played against it, I'm not confident enough to say it's tier 1. We'll put it in high tier 2. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I mean, again, Manadium was already really strong. Their fusion monster or whatever was just whack. Also, the Manadium support cards are really expensive. Like Visas, I think, is like $60 a piece because he hasn't been reprinted. Just overall, I know that the support that came out actually really helps this deck. The new Synchron monster, I'm pretty sure, is actually insane. But from there, we're going to leave it at tier 2. Pearly got the new Noir card and a new trap, which I don't remember what the trap does. But Noir, the new Noir, Pearly Noir, mentions, I believe, Sleepy Memory. which is good. An Xyz monster that mentions Sleepy Memory in this deck helps a lot, for sure. And overall, the Pearlies, I gotta say, are tier 1. Pearly, even though Delicious Memory is at 1, having a Pearly that mentions Sleepy Memory now, an extra deck Pearly mentioning Sleepy Memory now, helps the deck out so much. Gives the deck its go first potential again that it lost when Delicious Memory was limited. Thankfully, we don't have Sleepy Memory limited like they do in the OCG and at Worlds. Pearly is just incredibly powerful now. Or again, I should say. And thankfully, I finally picked this deck up, so I'm going to start learning how to play it. But it does lose simply to Kaijus. The deck loses so much to Kaijus. Thankfully, we are starting to see less of Kaijus in the format. It looks like we're going back to hand trap format for sure. Because, Ash Blossom kills Labyrinth. Ash Blossom doesn't really do shit to Orisa or to Kashtira, but it just seems like we're going back to a hand trap format for sure, and which means that less Kaijus means Pearly's happy. Yeah. Rescue Ace got some amazing support that, when released in the OCG, made Rescue Ace one of, if not the best deck in the OCG. It is not going to be the best deck in the TCG. Powerful for sure, not the best deck. Simply because of one Earth attribute cockroach. We don't have Max C in the TCG. Max C, there are a lot of decks in the OCG that are as good as they are simply because Max C exists. Rescue Ace is one of them. Rescue Ace is incredibly powerful, even with the new support in the TCG, but without Max C, the deck is not going to perform nearly as well as it does in the OCG. That being said, I'm still putting it at bottom of tier 1. This deck is actually insane. Being the new support and just in general the whole archetype's purpose is to protect the boss monster, get as much of the set as many of the traps or whatever as possible, and just prevent your opponent from playing. It's a very strong deck, and the new support just pops the deck off for sure. I mean, heck, it made Hydrant a $50 card. But like I said, without Max C, this deck is not going to perform nearly as well as it does in the OCG. Rika, until we get a ban list, and I don't even think this will get hit on the ban list unless it wins Worlds, Rika is still very strong. Rika does die to a hand trap format for sure, which means that if we are going to a hand trap format, Rika is going to be hurting. So that's why I'm putting it in tier 2. Rika is just very strong. The ability to tribute for cost is something that's so hard to play against. And so the fact that they can do that, the Rika Princess can tribute one of your monsters for cost if you have Concon on board, or tribute your opponent's monster for cost if you have Concon on board, and negate an effect is whack. And you can activate that from graveyard. It's a very hard deck to play against, but like I said, it dies to a hand trap format for sure. So if that's actually what we're heading towards, Rika is going to be in tier 2. D-Link is tier 1. D-Link is getting better and better by the minute. We still have all of our Bestials available to us in the TCG, unlike the OCG where they have hit all of the Bestials except for Saronir. All of our Bestials are available, and D-Link is thriving on that. Age of Overlord, we're getting Dark World Dragon, which means I'm sure D-Link will be running that, which means they can search Dark Hole once that set comes out. D-Link is just very strong. They just summon out big boards, and it's not super easy to hurt them, but definitely a tier 1 deck for sure. Runic. Runic got support in Dune. One monster, a singular monster, Sleipnir. And unfortunately, I think this card was released too late. Runic, as much as it's still played, I think in terms of playability is slowly falling out. Runic does die to hand traps. Runic dies to Kashtira, Riseheart, and D-Shifter because, you don't want your spells being banished. You want them to go to the graveyard so you can recycle them. So Runic Runic's going to struggle, I think. I think Runic is still a tier 1, but definitely bottom of tier 1, borderline tier 2. It's just gonna be a really hard to succeed with Runic. It just depends on like the engine you're running with it, for sure. Or sorry, the deck you're running it as an engine with. Like Live Twin Sprites probably will still succeed because Sprites haven't been hit yet. Haven't been hit again yet, I should say. Plunder wants their stuff to go to the graveyard as well. So it just depends what you're running Runic with. But Runic's gonna struggle. You know what? Honestly, for how much it's gonna struggle, seeing as we still have Shifter and Macro, or we have Shifter and Walking Macro and stuff like that. I'd have to say Runic is slowly falling out. Sleipnir does a lot for the deck, though. Sleipnir is actually kind of crazy. And honestly, I'm going to put this back in Tier 1 because I just realized that Sleipnir can be your answer for a Rise Heart. You summon out Sleipnir, and then you can just use it to banish a Rise Heart until, like, the standby phase or whatever. I don't know how much that would help, though, because of, like, Birth. But regardless, Sleipnir has playability. It's a very strong card. You just summon it on your opponent's turn with one of the Runic spells, and then you can use it to, like, disrupt by removing a monster from the game. But just, it's good. It's a very good monster. I just, again, think this was released, like, 2 sets too late. Synchron. Holy shit, this deck is insane. Revolution Dragon, or Revolution Synchron alone, is going to change so many decks. It's going to change stuff like ABC, obviously Synchron. Just any deck that can Synchro summon like an Ancient Fairy Dragon, this card just turbos it out. This deck is insane. I have had the displeasure of facing this deck with full power, and my opponent ended on like Baron, Crimson Dragon, Dissipator. He hit me twice with Cyframe Omega, so I was starting my turn with only 4 cards in hand after the draw phase. It was just a very... And then they had like 3 Omni Negates on board. Borreload Savage Dragon, I think, was also on the board. This deck is just crazy. Actually crazy. I think a lot of people... I think Revolution Synchron as a card is only good in specific scenarios, so it's not going to incredibly break the game. It's going to break certain decks. But the Synchron deck alone is going to skyrocket in playability. Unchained is also crazy. Unchained is probably also Tier 1. We have a lot of Tier 1s, for sure. There's, and you know what? I'm probably not the best person to be saying Tier 1, Tier 2s, and all that, but you know what? And I'm also going to put Runic back to Tier 2, just because of the fact that Unchained and, like, Synchron is up here as well. Unchained, or Runic just kind of drops. Unchained is crazy, though. Their new support has just made the deck really hard to keep up against because they're constantly recycling their resources, and the deck has 1,000 different ways to pop your shit off the board. The brand new dogs, the red dog can be activated straight from your hand as a quick effect on your opponent's turn, and then from there, it kind of allows your opponent to play on your turn. It's just a very strong card. This deck is going to be interesting, and I'm keeping my eye on it because I think this deck is going to actually be better than people think it's going to be, for sure. Unchained is just insane. I'm seeing a lot of people do also like a Live Twin engine with this deck because they can also play, because they're fiends, and so are the Unchained. This deck is crazy. The new support is absolutely insane. Just again, they allow you to do so much, and they're just going to be blowing your shit up on repeat. Vanquish Souls, I think, is just Tier 2. I think this deck, it's getting support in Age of Overlord. Actually, we'll put this behind Manadium. I think Vanquish Souls is really good when it came out in Wild Survivors, but like 2 or 3 other sets have come out since then. The deck has kind of lost its traction because people are realizing how to play against it. And I think its support in Age of Overlord is going to be really good. But until then, this deck is just kind of underwhelming. There's so many other decks that just got a bump up in this set. Pearly, Synchron, Unchained, Rescue Ace. All these decks kind of outpace Vanquish Souls, but also Vanquish Souls struggles from the fact that it did really well in the OCG because Max C. Max C was allowing you to draw cards so you could consistently have those attributes in your hand so you could reveal them on your opponent's turn to consistently play on your opponent's turn. In the TCG, we've had to kind of compensate for the lack of Max C and find other ways to get those attributes in our hand, which hasn't always been very consistent, which is what has made Vanquish Souls kind of struggle a little bit. But like I said, I think the support in the Age of Overlord set will help it out a lot. But yeah, so that is the tier list. Comment down below what you all think. Let me know if I missed a deck. Unfortunately, like I said, these two die too easily to stuff like Walking Macro and D-Shifter. And they don't play well with many other decks. But yeah, so comment down below what you all think. Let me know any deck. Maybe I've missed your favorite deck. And yeah, let me know what you all want to see for the next tier list. I'll see you all in the next video.